Okay, so looking at design settings, should be one of the first areas you probably set up. This is where we're going to be setting colors, the default fonts, buttons, kind of the main look of the site. So you can see in design settings here, you've got 8 colors that you can load in there. So you can change, obviously these are the ones that I've selected, only really use 1, 2, and 8. There's no order to these. Typically, even though you can change it, 8 will be the kind of default background of your site. And then I've set these colors. You can set all 8. You can just set 3 if you want to use them. It just means it's a shortcut for when you want to set different colors. So you can see here the title, which we'll move into. The title is going to be color 2. So instead of having to set the color every time, you can just choose one of the 8 or transparent. So if your kind of colors were going to be black, red, red, maybe a green, and these are the colors you're always going to select. And that's how you do that, so that when you can set the color, it's just easy to select from there, rather than on some other builders you have to kind of copy and paste in the color code every time. So it's just a shortcut. Just going to go back to my colors there, close without saving, jump back in. Okay, so back here. So you can put new colors in by either selecting them, or if you've already got your colors or get them from another program, you can put in the hex code here and do it that way. So the other thing you can set here is the type styles. So that is your title, heading, subheading, paragraph. So you're just setting the default of what those look like, and what we'll show in another section later on when we look at text and links. You can change this once you're in the builder. This is just setting what the default will look like. So you can set all the usual font things that you can here in any other program. So you can select the color of the title. You'll see here, here's your mobile preview, and here's the desktop preview showing what it'll look like. So you can change the color, you can choose what the font style you want. So if you're going to change a different font, you can do that. We'll show you shortly how to add in a new font. And you can choose the size for that is on mobile, and you can set the size on desktop. There you go. You've got line height, which is just the gap in between lines, so of the same paragraph. So you can make that bigger and smaller. Letter spacing is just the spacing between letters. That's I think that's always going to be 0. And you can choose the letter case. So default if you want things uppercase, lowercase, title case, or normal. Most of the time I choose normal. Got it loaded to normal on the template because you can just type in uppercase. But you've also got bottom margin. That is going to be the space between the bottom line of text and how much spacing it gives that. And you've got your text alignment. So these are all the things that you can set for titles, headings, subheadings, and paragraphs. So you can see here, yeah, title, heading, subheading, and paragraph. So you can change these as you like. When you put your own fonts in, you might have to adjust like the size of the font depending on what type of font you've got, if you aren't going with 90s headliner. You can also change what the default links look like. So we're in paragraph now. You can actually you can choose to show you what the links look like. So the links are pink and underlined. You could change the hover color to black, and you'll see, I accidentally clicked on that. And you hover over it, it'll go black, or leave it at pink. And yeah, so you've got that. Global styles, this is just the background color for new pages and canvases. as you can see there. So this just, like I said, by default, it's 8, but you could just override that here and make it all pink. But there you go. So that is the site style area. Moving on to the font side of it. So if you want to select your own fonts, you can do that here. You can either bring in Google Fonts, have a search of the fonts here. You can choose any of these. So let's say you go Bokor, and you can add that Google font if you want. So that means it'll be selectable in when you go into the builder and start selecting what fonts you want for things. Custom fonts, so if you buy a font from, say, Creative Market or DaFont, you can bring in the WOFF files. So as an example, if I bring across, got to hit upload font file first. My fonts folder, I'm going to bring across this new font. So Dunbar Tall Extra Bold, click on that. Gives you a little preview of what it looks like. I own a license to use this font on my website. You can give it a different font name if you like. Add custom font, and now that's in there. You will have to click save, and that'll bring it out here. And what that means is you'll now be able to choose those fonts in the font area. So we've got Bokor Normal, and I think this is the one I added, Dunbar Tall Extra Bold. So yeah, that's how you load in the fonts. Back into design settings. You can, I'm just going to remove these fonts so we don't need them. Buttons. So you can set what you've got 2 versions of buttons, and you can set what those act like on, as pretty much always, on desktop, and then on mobile. You can make adjustments for that. So again, most of it is just going to be looking at the color that you want it to be. So background, you could have a gradient and play with that, or I've got it set to color. So again, like you could have that as a clean one, not much of a difference. Okay, it's a gray. Text color, black. You can choose your font. Here's where you can just adjust the padding if you need to. If you want to make it a larger padding, you can see it just getting bigger there. Get that back down to 10. You can unlink those if you wanted to make it taller or shorter. And then you've got your border color. So if we made that black, and you can see what that looks like. And then you've got all the normal font settings down here. You can adjust your corners. So I've got corner radius of 90 degrees. You could make it, 30 degrees if you just wanted it trimmed off a little bit there. You can make it 10 degrees for a little bit, 20. I've got it set to 90, so it's a rounded edge. Drop shadow if you want one. And then you can change over here the hover settings. So what color does it turn when you hover over the button? So you can see what that looks like. If you go back to normal, you can see what that looks like there. So you've got that for desktop and mobile. And then you've also got a secondary button. It just means that when you're choosing a button, you can just choose the primary button or the secondary button, but like pretty much everything else, you can also change individual button if you want to. You're not stuck to just those options. These are just your shortcut to options. Let's close without saving. So if I wanted to change this button here, I could choose between, that was what a primary button looks like, and that is what our secondary button looks like. But you can customize it and say, I actually want to change I want to give this one a drop shadow, an outer drop shadow. I never play with drop shadows, but you can see there that it's added a drop shadow. So you're not stuck to just those 2 options. So you can adjust things as you go. I'm just going to go back to, I can get rid of that customization, and we're just back to a normal secondary button. And that is it for design settings. So covered buttons, covered how to load a Google font or a custom font by you got to make sure you're bringing in a WAF file. If you buy a web version of a font, it will have that there. They also give you a link here to Font Squirrel, where you can turn the TTF or OTF, if you've got one of those, into a WAF file. That will guide you through that itself. And then you just load that in here, upload font file, and bring it in here. And site style, we covered off the title, heading, subheading, and paragraph, that you can choose what they look like by default, but then in the builder, you can change what all those looks like. Okay, that's the end of that one.